This video will share some advice on managing deadlines, an all-important part of both studying at university and practicing as a professional designer. Design projects are a little bit like icebergs. They're deceptive. Looking at the finished design, there's often no hint of the hours of work that went into it. This is certainly true of design projects at university. If you misjudge your time management, it's all too easy to miss an assessment deadline. In practice, this can mean not getting paid, damaging your professional reputation and ability to find more work, and it can even mean being sued for the negative impact of your missed deadline has on someone else in professional practice. At university, it will mean failing the assessment item because university policy prevents us from marking late work. You're better off handing in incomplete work on time because at least then you'll get some marks. Some is better than none. Deadlines are inevitable, frequent, and important. Learning to manage your assessment deadlines is a skill like any other. You should consciously work at becoming skilled at managing your deadlines. This is an essential skill for professional practice. When a deadline is important, either academic or professional, there are usually significant consequences for missing it. We manage the risk of something going wrong by planning to take precautions against accidents and errors leading to major failures. Extreme consequences call for significant precautions. So design deadlines are usually external deadlines, that is, they're imposed upon us by others or our promises to others. These hard deadlines are important and they have serious consequences. Firstly, one of the ways of managing deadlines is to break a large project into parts and imposing personal or self-imposed deadlines. So, for example, if you have an important deadline near the end of the month, perhaps due on a Sunday, you might decide to break up the work into stages so you've got something to work on to guide your progress. This helps keep you on target. So set internal milestones and personal deadlines, objectives that you will aim to meet while you're working on it. But what if something goes wrong? Well, something always goes wrong. This means you need to plan a contingency. Contingencies are events for which we can't predict with certainty. Every project has problems, little hiccups or major setbacks. If we have some time to make up for them, there isn't much problem for us, and we might even forget that they happened. But if you're doing things at the last minute with no margin for error, then even a trivial problem can become a disaster. Running out of ink for your marker pens is normally no big deal. Go and buy some more ink. The printer playing up is inconvenient. It might take you a while to unjam it, or perhaps you'll need to buy a new printer cartridge. You could even take it to someone else to print your report. But running out of ink for your pens late at night before a presentation, or your printer breaking down 10 minutes before you need to print a report that's due, these are disasters. Some people experience these kind of dramas all the time and they wonder why they always have such bad luck. It's not bad luck, it's bad management. They make a habit of working without much margin for error. They're walking a high wire without a safety net. No error margin turns inconveniences into disasters. Good planning and time management usually makes unexpected problems quite manageable. Now, many assignments at QUT are submitted through Assignment Minder. You should make a habit of checking Assignment Minder operating hours if you suspect you might need to submit close to the deadline. Don't rely on word of mouth for this. It's just too important because the consequences of a mistake can be extreme and you can't blame someone else for something they just told you. You can find the operating hours on the Assignment Minder website. Make a habit of checking these for all important deadlines. That said, a plan to submit close to the deadline, the closing time of Assignment Minder for example, is a bad plan. It's a bad plan because it assumes everything will go smoothly, that there will be no delays, there is no margin for error. But if the consequences of missing the deadline are extreme, such as failing an assessment item and therefore often failing a unit, this is simply planning to fail. Instead, you need to plan to succeed by building in a safety margin, a buffer against unforeseen accidents and delays. We plan for contingencies by giving ourselves a margin for error. The greater the consequence of failure, the greater the risk of disaster, the larger the margin should be. Getting to Assignment Minder just minutes after it closes on the due date is going to mean failing the unit. Perhaps you plan to work on your assignment in the last 60 minutes when you get to campus. Maybe a journey that usually takes you 30 minutes maybe takes longer due to a bus strike or a road closure. What if you have car problems? All of these things are not grounds for an extension, and they may cause you to miss your deadline if you have no margin for error. In general, I recommend that you aim to submit important assignments to Assignment Minder at least 1 or 2 days before the deadline. That way, if something happens, you do have a day or two to recover from the problem. Now, this raises the question of how to manage deadlines and commitments. Well, in general, you need to have a system. You need to take a professional approach. A good system relieves you of the burden of remembering everything you need to do. It helps you manage priorities and the order in which you'll attend to things. The simplest way to do this is to make lists of everything you need to do. You should use a diary to manage due dates and times. There is also lots of useful software available to help with this. This is known as productivity or task management software, and some of this software is available for free, such as the freely available Wunderlist. You can find demonstrations of how to use software like this. Sometimes it's known as Getting Things Done software. Wunderlist and programs like it can help you manage all the different due dates that you have, not just for a single assessment, but for a whole unit, and indeed all of your units at university, and indeed aspects of your personal life as well. You can find out more information by looking at YouTube, and even I have recorded a guide to using Wunderlist to manage your assessment items. So look for this, and I hope you find it useful. So contingencies are possible to plan for. Things within your control, like forgetting an important aspect of the assignment or making a mistake and wanting to fix it, that's something good planning and an early start can make up for. Technical difficulties or supplier problems, such as the bureau you use for plan printing being too busy, it's the same thing. Don't leave that to the last minute. Work and social engagements are the same. You need to manage those parts of your life. If necessary, submit your work early to avoid missing your personal commitment or your deadline. Some students have problems that can't be fixed on time. Some contingencies are too hard to work around and meet the deadline. In such cases, you might qualify for more time to do the work, which we call an extension. These are things that are outside your control. They might be major personal crises or family crises, or perhaps a medical issue that robs you of a lot of productive time. These are why we have the assignment extension system. You can find this information on both Blackboard for all your units as well as the QUT webpage. And always when you're applying for extension, the onus is on you to provide proof, to provide documentary evidence. Usually this takes the form of a medical certificate or a counsellor's letter, but basically it's proof that it's not just your word that you had an important problem that stopped you working on it. There is indeed professional proof and documentary evidence to support that. So you'll need to supply that for an extension in every circumstance. Now, what happens if you've got a deadline approaching, you don't have a reason to apply for an extension, but you haven't finished? Well, hand it in anyway. Don't delay trying to make the perfect submission. It's much better off to submit something that's incomplete and get some marks for it than it is to submit after the deadline and get no marks. So manage your time carefully and hand something in even if it's not finished. So in summary, managing your deadlines is an important skill, and that's something you need to develop if you're going to be a professional designer. So you need to minimize the risk of things going wrong and develop professional habits. If you do this, you'll insulate yourself against the vagaries of fate and accident, and you'll generally find studying at uni and later on professional life, it's considerably calmer and less stressed than if you leave things to the last moment or don't plan for contingencies. So I wish you the best in developing these skills. They're really important. Don't delay, work on it now, and plan to succeed.